Once you've gotten the money, yay, everybody's super excited. We want to find out, what does the path to forgiveness look like? One, we are encouraging people to put funds in either a separate bank account or a minimally used account. And you may say, why does it matter? It matters because I am almost positive, having been an auditor for many years, that they're going to ask for bank statements. And you don't want them to see your normal operating costs coming out of the PPP funds, even if it's by accident, even if you intend to replace those funds. So you want to put it into a minimally used account so that when the time comes and if you are audited, you are audit ready. So that's where the separate bank account comes from. You also need—
Joy, let me jump in real quick. If somebody can reply back to me, if you can see Joy's screen, let me know, or if you cannot see her screen, let me know. Yes, we cannot see your screen right now, Joy.
What about now?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm just going to make it bigger. And I'm going to talk about so we want to determine the number of employees you had at February 15th, because you must have that same amount on June 30th.
It's opened up in the screen that shows the framework for the PowerPoint versus the individual slides.
I'm sorry?
It's open as—
That's okay. I know. I see it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, so the employees, determine the number of employees you have at February 15th. You must have the same amount on June 30th. So if it's just you as a solo practitioner, you shouldn't fire yourself. As long as you keep yourself employed by June 30th, you're good to go. But if you have employees, for example, you need to have the same number of employees as of February 15th as you have on June 30th. The only exception that they're now allowing is if you make a written offer to someone and they decline it, because let's say unemployment is paying them a lot more money and they say, oh, I don't want to come back. That person can be excluded because you did at least offer them their job. But you have to have it in writing. It can't be a verbal thing. And on the flip side, when you're talking to people about coming back, they have to understand that if you offer them their job and they decline it because unemployment is paying them more money, they are technically in violation of the unemployment rules, because if they're offered a job, they don't have to accept it, but they have to have a good reason for not accepting it. And so they will, and what's going to happen on the other side is there will be lots of audit of unemployment, because you are going to attest in writing that I offered you a job. And if that person stayed on unemployment, they will have a fraud case against them as an individual. So you might want to, as you're talking to people about coming back, that is something to go ahead and explain to them so that they understand what their position is. On the financial statement side of the house, you should go ahead and create a liability account called COVID-19 PPP loan, because again, this is a loan until it's forgiven. And you should create 4 expense accounts on your profit and loss for salaries, rent, utilities, and healthcare spending.
And Joy, we have our first question coming in from Barb. Is there any place for K1 income or partnership income?
On the financial statements or on the application process?
I'm assuming that it's during the application process.
Yes. So where you're going to put K1 income is the same place you would put Schedule C income. I believe it's line 7, and it speaks to self-employment income. That's where you're going to put your K1 requested amount. And it has to match your K1 exactly, because that's all they're going to say you're eligible for. Next up. So if you applied from our earlier slide, if you applied for the $107,000 and you use 75% of it for payroll related expenses, payroll, health, retirement, then that portion of the loan is forgiven. And then as long as you use the other 25% for rent and utilities, that also can be forgiven. A question that I've gotten quite a few times is, can you use 100% of it for payroll? The answer to that question is yes, you can. You don't have to actually use any of the PPP money for rent and utilities if you don't want to or don't need to. As long as you use 75% or more for payroll, you are in the safe zone, and you should have 100% of your loan should be forgiven.
All right. Now, in alignment with that last statement you made, Joy, what if a person's already ran 2 weeks of payroll from their regular business account? They didn't separate it out. Should they still open a separate account? And how do they go back and record what transpired from their regular account moving forward?
Great question. I would say pull it out and put it in this bank account, and you want to have the documentation. So most people are using a third party system. And so I would make sure that my payroll report shows exactly how much I left and put in the operating account, or how much I ran. I don't know. I'm trying to think, does it make sense to go back and try to pull it out? I probably would make it clean going forward and just make a note to say, this is what we did. And I would try on my bank statement to just pull that out and maybe take a picture of it or a snip of it, just to show that the amount I used matches the payroll that was run to the penny, so that you can have a clean audit trail going forward. Because I'm not sure, it doesn't make sense to try to go back and fix it, but you can go forward, move it to a new account immediately before you run the next payroll, so you don't have that issue.
And Joy, would you like for me to mention here the opportunity to track, or do you want to wait?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, so since we're talking about that, tracking the funds is going to be something that requires a system. And one of the things we're doing during this live is actually we're offering a system to track PPP funds for anybody who's interested in having a tracking system. Many of you all may just want to create a program with Premier Group directly to handle it, but for those that want to do it themselves, we understand it's two different groups. Sometimes it's the same person. So we're going to put the offer in the comments section right now. We're still going to continue on, but we just wanted, for many of you or some of you who are like, you know what, I need that now. We just want to make it available. And if you couldn't make it to the end, we want to make sure it's available. But we will bring this up again later on in the live.
Okay. And it looks like we might have a question or two more. If not, I'll move on. What is excluded? Any salaries over $100,000. So what does that mean? Any person that is making more than $3,846.15 per payroll, anything above that has to be taken, it has to be removed, because you can't use PPP funds for any salaries over $100,000. You cannot pay payroll outside of the US. You actually can't pay payroll taxes with these funds at all. So you can't pay your Social Security, your Medicare, your federal withholdings from your employees from PPP funds. The only thing you can use PPP funds for is basically salary. So no taxes, no nothing. You also can't, as part of the CARES Act, there is a separate tax credit that is available to people that are, or to employers that are withholding funds. You cannot take those credits if you receive PPP funds. It was an either or option. So you cannot do that. You cannot pay mortgage or debt principal, and you absolutely cannot pay 1099s with PPP funds, because each of them was eligible for their own PPP loan. And so in fact, it would be like you doubled it. So that is, you are not eligible to do that.
Okay. Now, Joy, let me, I'm gonna do this slightly out of order, everybody, because I want to tie this back to the original question. When the question came in, is there a place for K1 income partnerships? The clarity came saying the question was referring to, can K1 income be counted towards payroll forgiveness?
Yes, it can. It absolutely can. But again, it just has to be under $100,000 for that 8-week period, for that one, for each person. So it's $100,000 per person. So as long as your K1 reflects less than that for this 8-week period, you are fine. You're good to go.
All right. Now the next question, back in order, is if you don't have 100% employees back, is anything forgiven?
Yes, they are going to do a prorated calculation for for employees if you can't get them all back. And let's not forget, it depends on, are they not coming back because they're trying to stay on unemployment, or are they not coming back because they got another job? If you won't be penalized for either of those things as long as you have an explanation. So again, that is something, that's why we have to have this paper trail, and you're going to hear me keep talking about it, because if you need a paper trail to have a clean audit and be audit ready. And so the thing is, just document every single thing you do to make sure that you are on the path to forgiveness. And even if you don't hire everybody back by the end of the 8-week period, well, I guess at this point, June 30th is the line in the sand that you have to have people back by. So if they didn't come back today, but they come back by June 30th, that's how they're gonna look at your head count as of June 30th.
All right, Joy, I have another question come in. I just received PPP funds yesterday. When does the 8 weeks begin for payroll? And this coming Friday will be paid for work done last week. I need to get my staff back from unemployment. They did not work last week and are not scheduled to work this week. And so I'm just going to finish up. It's not an end to that, but I'm going to say I'm going to create an end for that. So what should this person do in this situation?
So one, the clock starts the day you are funded. So not the day you're approved, but the day the money hits your account. That is what the Department of Treasury has said is the start date for the loan. So in fact, in your case, your first payroll would be when your people come back to work. It sounds like maybe next week. And even if they come back in a staggered fashion, I would be trying to get back as many people as you can, and obviously as long as you have work for them to do and hopefully are able to sustain it from there. But your 8-week clock, if you got the money yesterday, start it yesterday. And so I would be trying to get people back as soon as possible. Also, one of the things I noticed, and you didn't say this, and this might not be your particular situation, a lot of people tend to not realize that they should, at this point, because you did get the PPP funds, you should be including yourself in the payroll account. So don't be afraid to, if you were on payroll, to make sure that you are taking care of yourself in addition to trying to take care of other people as well. Because sometimes as business owners, we put ourselves last on the list. So don't be afraid to do that either.
All right, now I'm going to ask this question for everybody watching. If they heard any of the other trainings you've done, you might know what was coming. Can we use this money for bonuses?
Yes, you can and you should use this money for bonuses, because remember, you do have this 8-week clock. You can use it for bonuses for yourself or for your staff to reward them for maybe coming back. So that may be something else you can do when you're trying to bring people back. You can give them a little incentive because they have been struggling, and you know that they may either have been struggling or they've been on unemployment. So you want to bring them back at a decent rate. You can give them a bonus to help you spend this money down within the 8-week period.
All right, we still have another question. Do we change our auto pay accounts for utilities to come out of the PPP account? And also do we write rent checks from the account and change our payroll account overall?
No and no. So what the separate account does is, as things need to be paid, you can transfer money or write a check between one account to the other. It's just to show the clean audit trail. So you could, if you have checks for that separate account, write them out of there, or you could just, if your rent is $2,000, transfer $2,000 and then notate, I am paying $2,000 for rent. Here's the final check. So it just wants, you want to have a clean way to track how you spent the money, but you don't have to, I'm not encouraging people to make a whole bunch of transitions and change it in their payroll system, because then you have to change it back, and God forbid you forget to do that, and that account only has a certain amount of money in it. So we're just using that as more so as a clearing account, if you will. Money is coming in and then money is going out in a clean fashion.
All right, now with that thought, money's coming out, money's going in this cleaner fashion, how do you separate the taxes from payroll when you're dealing with systems like ADP? Do you just repay the account, the taxes, or in the taxes that were part of the payroll?
So what you should do, perfect example, ADP is a good example of this. What you want to do is just transfer your gross salary amount. So if you run salary at ADP, it's going to say this is what your gross pay is, $20,000. Your net pay after all of your taxes and deductions is only $17,000. Well, guess what? you're transferring the $20,000 because that's how much your actual payroll is. So you are transferring gross salary amount. And that's an easy find on that actually is at the bottom of usually on the ADP reports, it shows you, so it'll either say gross pay or total pay, and then it does taxes and deductions, et cetera. You're looking at the gross pay column.
So we have some people who are looking to reimburse their PPP account with the funds used for federal taxes. It was heard that the PPP is considered taxable funds. Can you speak about the tax implications of using PPP?
So those are sounds like two different questions. So
I think is what the implications of using PPP for tax purposes.
Okay, so if you use the PPP for tax payments, you're just basically saying you don't want that money to be forgiven. That money will be considered a loan to the business and will need to be repaid at the 1% rate. So because you cannot get forgiveness for payroll tax payments.
And this is just a statement to everybody listening. Again, the clock starts when you receive the funds, and we're talking about a loan that is not forgiven at 1%. Now, Joy, this is a question. If a person out there has maybe some high interest debt and they receive, let's say it's 12, 13, 14, 25%, and now this money comes in at 1%, can they use this money, this 1% money, to pay off this 12 to 25% money?
Yes, as long as they do not want the loan to be forgiven. So you can use it for that. It's just that you have taken the forgiveness off the table for whatever amount you use for other purposes besides payroll, rent, and utilities.
So would it make more sense to maybe use whatever the money was I was paying myself, put it towards that bill, and then use the PPP money to now take over my payroll expense?
Your own payroll, yes. So if you had a savings account, you could in theory pay off the loan that you speak of, but all while using the PPP money to still pay yourself. So at the end of the day, PPP money has to be used for the PPP purpose if you want it to be forgiven. But I've had people say, hey, I need this money for other things. I'm not worried about forgiveness. If forgiveness is not your concern, then yes, you can still use the money for other business expenses as long as you understand that it will not be forgiven.
All right. Now, what happens if a person was not on their own payroll? Can they add themselves to payroll?
Yes, they can. Yes, you can. You can actually just but you need to fill out all the paperwork. You can't just go in and add yourself. You need to fill out all the appropriate paperwork because again, we need to have an audit trail. But yes, you can go and add yourself, and as long as your salary is under 100,000, that is perfectly fine. There's nothing illegal about that at all.
And this is one of those situations where if you are creating a new process for yourself, it may be better to actually set an appointment with Premier Group versus trying to figure it out, unless you're you have it all covered. But for the people who are actually purchasing the PPP tracking system that Premier Group created, those are for the individuals who are really kind of following business as usual, and they're putting the money into a separate account, or they aren't planning on it and they definitely need to track it. So think about the complication of your own situations when you take on these PPP funds, whether you actually have a sit down to kind of go deep dive, and this is my scenario, because you don't want the audit to come and then at that point try to scramble to figure it out then.
Right.
And so I'm going to drop the link again, and I'm saying this because they talked about the 2 million and up being by default audited and 2 million and below being randomly chosen, but the 2 arrests so far have been under 2 million. So you just want to be careful when you kind of play the game of, well, I don't think it'll be me. Although I know no one in this group would do that.
Not at all.
We have another question, and I'm out of order slightly, so I will go back up. Let me clarify. My question is, how do you separate the taxes from payroll? When you run payroll on ADP, you can't separate the taxes. The payroll is coming out of a specific bank account for PPP. So can I run payroll from that account, and whatever the taxes were, reimburse that amount from another business account?
No, so that's what I'm saying. So really, you should leave your accounts as they are, run payroll as you always did from your regular operating account, and just from the separate account that you have, just transfer the amount of the gross salary over to that. So then there's no taxes, taxes never came out, never touched it. There's not even the slightest issue of were PPP funds used for, were they used for taxes at all. So if you would just leave it where it's at, where it's always been, and just transfer the money, your gross wages amount, and offset it. And then you don't have that issue at all.
Okay, now the next question, is the employee portion of taxes included in forgiveness or not?
Well, it is, because when you do gross salary, that is before any dollars are even taken out for taxes. So that's why gross salary is the number, because that is the amount you actually owe the person. So if they make $15 an hour, you don't pay them $15, you pay them $12 after taxes. What would be deductible for PPP would be the $15, because that is before tax amount. So that's where that gross wages number comes from. Gross salary, total pay, that all of that is before taxes.
All right, thank you so much. And everyone, I just want to say I appreciate you all being patient with me. I'm getting to the questions. I'm trying to go as quick as possible. And I know you're just itching to push unmute and just yell it out. So thank you for your patience. So the question is there a limit in the bonus we can give each employee?
So the limit is that it cannot take the person over $100,000. As long as you are under the $100,000 per person, there is no limit. But I will tell you, if you're using a third-party system, bonuses are taxed at 25%. So whatever you intended to give them, it's not going to be that exact amount. Bonuses are taxed at a higher rate. And so if you're giving someone $5,000, $10,000, at $10,000, they're only going to probably get $6,000 or $7,000. So it may not be wise to try to give someone a really large bonus, because it's not going to have the impact that you're hoping for.
All right, now this next question, I'm going to synthesize a little bit. If you received your funds but don't feel safe reopening your establishment, this person has a child care center and they don't see themselves reopening it until back to school season, what would you advise them to do? And the part I'm going to add is, I guess, I don't know, I'm assuming they're still paying their staff, but I don't know if they're still paying their staff or not. So if you can give me some clarity, or if you know about the situation, because I guess whether they're paying them or not would be a big determination on what to do.
So if you're paying them, you would use the PPP funds for that. If not, and you are just going to stay closed until September, you have the option to either turn the funds back in, or you can hold them and just pay the 1% loan, because when you reopen in September, you're probably going to have some ramp up costs as you try to get back into the swing of things. There'll be some cleanings and a lot of expenses that you're going to have. And as long as you know that the loan is not forgivable and you're going to pay 1% on it, it's still a loan at the end of the day. So as long as you're using it for business expenses, I would probably say keep it, but you only use it for what you absolutely need to, so that as you need to start making those payments, your money has started to flow in, because now your parents are paying this October, November, and you've gotten into a better flow. Because a lot of people, especially childcare centers and schools, you're going to be impacted, because people are going to be, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be laid off and aren't going to be working. So your numbers may not be where they were pre-coronavirus. And so we don't know how long it's going to take to get us ramped back up for that.
Well, Joy, let me ask a follow-up question. It's not one of these on here, but what if a person has that situation? Is it possible to use PPP funds to pay into like in a holding account earmarked for payroll at a later date and still qualify?
No, not for forgiveness.
Not for forgiveness. Okay.
Forgiveness is the big deal right now. Forgiveness is only for 8 weeks. So if you do not use the funds within the 8 weeks, because sometimes I've been asked a couple of times, what happens if you don't use all the funds? It just turns into a loan. That's all it does. And you are then required to pay that portion back. So it is just a 1% loan for whatever amount of money you got. That was not forgiven.
Okay. And so the next question says, our county isn't open yet, so we're unable to reopen the business. In the event we did have work for employees to telework for the next 8 weeks, but we need to furlough them again, will we be penalized? And so let me clean it up a little bit. I think they're saying if they bring their employee, they pay their employees, but then they realize they have to, again, send them back to furlough. Will they be penalized for sending them back to furlough after bringing them back, paying them with PPP money?
So what they've said is, as long as you have the, so right now, as the rule stands, as long as you have the same headcount as of June 30th, you should be able to have that portion of the loan forgiven and you should not be penalized. That is what the rule states right now. And if they issue another PPP funds and your workers are furloughed, they may not let you bring them back again. But as long as you have the same headcount as of June 30th, you shouldn't be penalized if, God forbid, you have to lay people off again at a later point in time, because that's probably the reality for quite a few businesses out there right now.
All right, and the next question says, what is the best way to use the PPP funds if businesses are still closed, but you don't want to join, you don't want to end up with the loan. You don't want to end up with the loan. So how do you have it forgiven if businesses are still closed? Do you suggest paying staff just to be in compliance?
So I wouldn't know, not really. I think what you would do is you would try to, again, pay the rent and the utilities. I would also pay staff to do, maybe not bring back your full staff, but bring back some people, because even though your business is quote unquote shut down, there's still things that need to happen in the background of your business to just keep it functional and operational. So I would bring it back the essential personnel, if you will, for your back office staff. And then the rest, you can let the money sit there. And then when the loan payments come due, just give that money back and you won't have the loan anymore, because we will have partial forgiveness. And then we have this lump sum of money that we can just pay them back all at once. And so then you no longer have that loan.
All right. And this one, is it okay to hire additional staff because some staff won't be back full time? I am also in childcare and we are mandated to remain closed until June 29th.
So I did hear that. I heard that some you can hire additional staff and they could be doing things like, looking through your enrollment files, making sure that everything is up to par. And I believe that if you serve essential personnel, but I think there's an application process with that, you could be open now. So you may consider whether or not you want to just apply for that to start reopening and to see if you can get some essential personnel in there. But yes, you can hire additional staff as needed with the funds.
Okay. Now, are they just looking at the total number of staff and not the individual staff members? Are they looking at the number, or are they looking at the number of employees on June 30th? And the example is this. I have 9 employees as of February 15th. And 5 employees come back working remotely, and then at the end of June, I will have 9 employees back working.
Okay, good.
You guys are getting complicated. You're not making this easy at all. So.
As long as by June 30th, all 9 people are back to work, you should be fine for forgiveness. And you've been paying your people that are there, and you used all the PPP funds, you should be fine for forgiveness.
All right, the questions are rolling in at this time. So this is a clarification to an earlier question. My question is, how do you separate taxes from payroll? When you run, oh, you know what? I did that one already.
Yes.
That was one of
Was that question answered? So you could just put in the chat box if we clarify that question and if you're good now with our response.
Yeah, I answered that one. Will they audit both accounts, the PPP account and the operating account you're transferring to?
No, not as long as you have your documentation. So let me give you an example. If you run payroll and you have, your payroll is $2,000, your gross pay is $2,000. We have our payroll report and we can show that we paid out $2,000. That's it. The audit is over because our documentation and our PPP account have the same numbers. So they're not going to look at the operating account unless you start mixing and mingling and leaving. You kept PPP funds in that account, which is why we're suggesting moving it to either a separate account or a minimally used account, so that when they do ask for bank statements, you have them ready and it's clean.
Okay, now the next question is, what, if any, are the penalties that someone, if someone was terminated and was on the original payroll list?
As long as you have your ducks in a row, so they're not saying you have to keep people employed who are not a good fit for your business. So as long as that would follow your normal HR procedure. As long as you had a reason and that person is not able to collect unemployment, I think you're fine as far as headcount goes, because we have a paper trail to show what happened and why you let that person go.
And some of this goes back to really making sure you have the documentation in order. And it's not only documentation of what's happening with employees or maybe not happening with employees, but the reasons for things. So, if something unusual happens, I don't think the government is going to say, well, they stole from you, you got to keep them so they can stay on, receive PPP money.
Yes, exactly. But you have to, again, the paper trail is going to be everything. That's why we have created our PPP tracker, and we're encouraging people to just keep track of everything that you do, because that's what happens in almost any audit. We've done audits for clients with the IRS. On the SBA side, we've done audits for the SBA. It always comes down to information. The issues that people usually have is they want to tell you a story, but they don't have the supporting documentation to support that story. And that is the differentiator. That becomes the issue. So your story and your paperwork have to match. And that's what we're trying to do here today.
Can an individual prepay rent up to 25% for forgiveness?
So, you can actually do back rent. Prepay, I'll double check on that. I don't feel like you can, because it has to be paid within that 8-week period. I want to say they said no to prepayments, but I will double check. If you could just drop your email in the chat box, I'll look at that and I'll shoot you an email afterwards just to confirm.
And this question speaks to the PPP and EIDL. What if you received funds from both?
Okay, great question. So if you got funds from the EIDL, and I'm assuming you got the advance, because I don't know anyone who's actually gotten an EIDL loan. The advance can be spent on any business operating expenses. So far, they have not even said that they're going to audit those funds. So that has no, as of this moment, there are no slated audits for the $10,000 or however much you got per employee advance. And it can be used for general operating expenses. So that can go in your operating account. So far, there's no tracking for that at all.
These are some great questions. So we're looking at an example. If you have 2 people who quit but hire 2 new people, will they look at the staff count only as, each individual, or will they cross-reference to unemployment?
So what they're going to look at is, they're not looking at names, they're looking at head count. So if you had 2 people and they left or they quit, they actually shouldn't be eligible for unemployment. And that may be an issue at a later point in time for them. But if you replace them with 2 new people, as long as at the end of June 30th, you have a total of 2, you're good to go.
So that's a net zero effect.
The net zero effect, there's no problem, because your head count didn't actually change. The individual names aren't as important to them as the number of people is.
Okay. Now, what happens if we do not have enough work to bring employees back full time because we are still closed? Can they collect partial unemployment? I'm gonna fill this in a little bit. I'm guessing they're asking, can they still collect partial unemployment and we still pay partial from the PPP funds?
Yes, but because you're only paying partial, you're not going to get the full forgiveness credit. You're only going to get credit for the partial payments. So here's the thing, I'll kind of fill it in a little bit for you. You couldn't pay them part-time, give them a bonus, and they still collect unemployment, because that seems like they're double and possibly even triple dipping. If you're just paying them a part-time salary, which is below their normal salary, and they're still eligible for unemployment, then yes, they can do both. But for the most part, if you're paying someone, they're probably not going to be eligible for unemployment anymore.
All right. Now this question came in. When was the last update? It seems like it changes a lot, and I can just say yes. It's not only changing a lot, but if she states the last update, it's probably going to change by the time we get off of this webinar. So when was the last update?
For the care,
The
so
PPP, I guess rules and regulations.
So they issued something 2 weeks ago. They're actually supposed to issue something this week by actually the 14th. So I don't know if you guys heard, or you probably did, because we're all trapped in our houses and our various workplaces. So when Roof Chris and Shake Shack and all those places got money, they gave them until May 7th to return the money. Then they extended it till May 14th because they started to say, if you had other sources of funding, you should turn the money back in. But guess what? They didn't clarify what other sources of funding are. So are you saying if I, a business owner, had some savings and I don't want to spend all the savings, I shouldn't have applied for PPP? So they haven't given that clarification. So we're supposed to get another clarification sometime this week, which will probably be on Thursday or Friday. And so once we do, we'll do another updated webinar just to keep you guys in the loop of what's going on.
All right. And how far back can rent payments in arrears go?
February 15th, 2020. So you had to have it from February 15th, 2020 is the cutoff.
All right. Now, this person applied for PPP. They have not received funds yet. My current lease ends June 30th. June 30th. Can I use the funds to pay our current rent for April, May, and June? Also, I signed a new lease in on March 27th. Can I use PPP funds to pay the rent for the new lease and have the loan forgiveness on both of these leases? Now, I think also in this question, it doesn't allude to it, but the PPP funds aren't 100% for rent. So I think you already said it a number of times.
So it's only 25% for rent. So so in your scenario, as long as you stay within your 25% rent, and that covers your old lease and your new lease, that sounds like it would be, well, no, because then I would say yes for the old rent, but no for the new rent, because that's going to be after June 30th, and that's going to take you outside of the 8-week period.
All right. And can you let me know about the prepay of rent? Oh,
yeah,
they just
so that's why she's putting, yes, I will definitely let you know about that.
Oh, it's a number of people who have
I feel strong. I'm pretty sure because this June 30th date is one that they've been pushing pretty hard. I feel like prepay rent is a no-go, but I'll definitely check into it to let you know.
And can I use the PPP to pay severance benefits for an employee?
Yes, you absolutely can. That is one of you can, because that's part of payroll.
All right. Now, if a person applied for PPP, then later realized that payroll expenses were not included in the application, can you amend your original application?
So actually, I'm going through that right now with a client. There was an issue with the PPP, but we caught it before they signed their loan documents. And so we were able to go back in and make an adjustment. If you already signed your loan documents, you're going to have to go back to the bank to see if they have a process to handle that type of issue, and whether or not it's even going to be worthwhile. Because in some cases, what they'll do is they'll void the original agreement you have, and then you have to start the process all over again. So it would really have to be worth your while to do that.
Right. If you apply for, just to clarify, the number of employees only matters on June 30th.
Yes, it matters on February 15th and on June 30th.
All right. So the number of employees weekly for the next 8 weeks can be below the February 15th number.
Yes, it can be. As long as on June 30th, we can show that those people were in your head count, you should be good to go.
All right, and I am still going. All right, can this be used for SEP IRA contributions?
Yes, because that SEP IRA is retirement. So yes, you can use it for SEP IRA contribution.
All right. And so Joy, for those who are thinking, you know what, this is a lot of information, how would they go about scheduling an appointment with you to sit down and go through their unique situation?
So we'll drop the link in the chat box, and also you guys will all receive the recording afterward, and we'll send you our scheduling link. You can schedule a consultation with myself and my team to assist you with all of the questions and needs you may have surrounding PPP and just accounting in general, because I'm not sure, some people really the coronavirus caught us all off guard, but trying to apply for these loans really threw some people for a loop because they did not necessarily have all their documentation in order. And so then they couldn't qualify for the amounts that they felt like they should have. And so if you find yourself in that situation, definitely reach out. We are here to assist and help you to gather your documentation and get it all together so that if this happens again, or even if you just need to make adjustments to your business, you're not caught off guard. So that's what we do.
All right, now we have another question. If an employee makes over 100K currently,
Mm-hmm.
do you pay them up to the 100K, or are you saying that they are exempt from the loan process?
No, you pay them up to 100K, and anything over the 100K that you can still continue to pay them their normal salary. You just can't use PPP funds to pay their normal salary.
Right. Another question came in, and I'm going to fill in some gaps, I think. The question is, are we expected to bring back staff that were part-time or substitutes? So I'm thinking the question is asking, is the expectation that they actually bring back the part-time staffers over there, or can they bring in substitutes? And if I'm wrong, please just tell me I'm wrong. I'm okay with that.
You can bring it, as long as you have that personal employee, you can either bring in part-time staff or substitutes, as long as, again, the headcount is the same as it was on February 15th. So they could be substitutes because they would still be part-time employees, but you can't pay substitutes as 1099.
And with the question, somebody asked about the recording, will it be available? And I believe you stated that the recording will go out. I want everybody to be very clear on the fact that the guidance on this is changing by the day. So although you will receive the recording and some of this information may be relevant now, it's important if you see Joy, advertise that she's doing this again, it's probably because the regulations has changed and we need to give new guidance. For those who will be working directly with PG, of course, you be made up to date because they're tracking your funds for you. But for even those who are purchasing the PPP tracker that's listed in the chat, you have to just be cognizant that we're not